Well, this lecture will determine how good of a listener you are. Welcome to Chapter 12, Interpersonal Communication and Effective Listening. Most good managers say that if you're spending 50% of your time talking, you're talking way too much and you should be listening more. Support listening consists of 3 responses: open question, and responses, and content reflection. You should ask open questions because they can't be answered with a simple yes or no. What do you think about type of question forces the person to give you a lengthy response and give you real feedback on a situation. Keeps the person talking, but you still have to listen, not just say Content reflection means that you only interrupt the person speaking to make sure you fully understand what they're saying and encourage them to keep going. But in reality, we all have time limits, don't we? And this means we really have to care about what the person is saying in order to offer supportive listening. Here are some keys to effective retentive listening. People on average listen at an effective rate of 25%. For some people, it's a lot less than that, which is very depressing for me because when I think about doing the audio for these lectures, I'm wondering if students are walking away with at least 25% of it. Why is listening much more difficult than reading? It's because you have one chance to get it right. Have you ever read a difficult paragraph in a book, but you know that you can go back and reread it a few times until you get it? But when you're listening, you've got one chance to hear it and understand it. What's interesting is that schools teach reading, writing, arithmetic. Even though we spend 80% of our time communicating verbally face-to-face, we're never taught effective listening skills. To make sure that you really understand the person talking, restate their ideas in your own words and preface your statements with phrases like, "Are you saying?" "It seems that I hear you saying." Wait for the other person's response. Paraphrase the other's response to ensure you completely understand, and try to avoid indicating approval or disapproval. If the person you're talking to thinks that you're not on their side or that you don't agree with their ideas, they may stop talking altogether. It's only through effective communication that we can manage conflict. Here are 3 different kinds we're going to talk about: simple, pseudo-conflict, and ego conflict. Simple conflict happens when you feel you can't meet your goal without blocking someone else's goal. For example, Sue and Bob have a simple conflict in that she wants to stay home and he wants to go out to dinner. So the issue at heart is very simple. Should they stay in or go out for dinner? Bob, however, can make it complicated if he says, "Do we have a nice dinner out, or do I have to eat that crap that you fixed, Sue?" If Bob and Sue feel that the issue is going to get heated, then they can let the issue drop for a while if they can. Or another solution, instead of waiting a while, is to face the problem together, to not compete but act as a team. Maybe come to some kind of compromise. Maybe instead of going out to dinner or staying in for dinner and having Sue fix it, they could go out and get takeout and come back home. Pseudo-conflict happens when 2 people actually agree on an issue. They just don't know it because they can't communicate it. Has this ever happened to you when you agree with someone else, but after 30 minutes of arguing, you finally figure it out? For example, over Christmas break, my husband and I both talked about how we'd love to go to Hawaii and we'd love to visit with his parents. We argued over it, even though we both decided we'd like to do both. We couldn't do both at the same time, so we decided to meet his parents in Hawaii for a visit. Ego conflict happens when 2 people are so emotionally involved that their egos get threatened. Has this ever happened to you where you're arguing with someone and the issue itself is quite trivial, but you're so upset that it gets blown way out of proportion? The trick is to try and stay focused on the facts and get the other person to focus on the facts as well. Let them do as much talking as they need to do and vent. Describe what has happened without being competitive. You don't want to say, because you were stupid and lazy, the shipment didn't make it out on time and we're going to lose our biggest customer. So how can you rephrase that? Maybe, can you explain why the shipment didn't make it out on time? Try and figure out the sources of conflict. Get to the point of where the real problem is. Are you fighting with an employee and this situation is a perfect opportunity to let him have it? Here are some different outcomes of conflict that probably all of us have experienced. Discontinuing the relationship means that the problem's so bad that we just decide to end things. Or we can suffer through the relationship, hope it will get better on its own. Dampening the conflict means that we avoid the problem, we ignore that it exists. And finally, resolving the conflict. This is what we all hope for in the end, that we can communicate and work it out. Some important things to remember about conflict. One is that it's inevitable. Even if you are the sweetest, nicest person on the face of the earth, it's impossible not to disagree with others. And that doesn't mean that conflict is a bad thing. It's not necessarily harmful. When conflict is worked out, sometimes the situation is much better after the fact. And it's also important to remember that conflict arises for many reasons and takes many forms.